There is a particular kind of silence that follows you into your 60s. Not the silence of a quiet house, not the silence of a slow morning. The silence of something you meant to say and didn't. Come in, pull up a chair. I want to talk about regret today. Not the kind that comes in lists, not the financial kind, though that exists and it's real. The kind that lives underneath everything else. The kind you don't say out loud, even to yourself, especially to yourself. 62%. That's how many retirees, when asked honestly in surveys, in interviews, say they would go back and do things differently. And here's the part that surprised the researchers. Most of them weren't talking about money. They weren't talking about the investment they didn't make, the house they should have bought, the pension they should have started earlier. They were talking about something harder to name. One gentleman, a man in his late 70s, told an interviewer something I haven't been able to stop thinking about. He said he would trade his entire pension, every last dollar of it, just for 5 minutes with his father. To say the words he kept bottled up for 40 years. Not an argument to resolve, not an explanation to give. Just 3 words that he never found the right moment for. That story is not unusual. That story, in one form or another, is almost everyone's story. We grew up in a particular kind of world. A world where emotions were not the point. You showed up, you provided, you endured, you kept going, even when keeping going was the hardest thing imaginable. That was the language of love we were given. And it wasn't wrong. It was honourable in its way. It built things. It held families together, but it came at a cost. Because in a life organised entirely around usefulness, around doing and providing and producing, there isn't always room for the other things. For sitting with someone and saying nothing useful at all. For admitting that you're frightened. For telling the people you love exactly how much they have meant to you. Those things got postponed, not out of coldness, out of busyness, out of the assumption that there would always be more time. There is a phrase I keep returning to. Relationships rarely explode overnight. They erode, slowly, quietly, without drama, in the space between the calls you meant to make and the visits you kept putting off, and the words that waited for a better moment that never quite came. That erosion, that accumulation of small silences, is what most people mean when they talk about regret. I want to stop here for a moment. I want you to think of one person right now. Don't say their name out loud, just hold their face in your mind. Someone you've been meaning to reach, someone you've been meaning to thank, someone you've been meaning to tell, that they changed something in you, that they mattered more than you ever found the language to say. Hold that face. We'll come back to it. Because before we talk about what to do, I want to say something about regret itself. Most people treat it like a verdict, as though feeling regret means the jury has come back, the case is closed, you are found guilty of a life not fully lived. And I want to challenge that, directly and firmly. Regret is not a verdict. Regret is information. It is your life, your whole, long, complicated, imperfect life, trying to tell you something that it couldn't find the words for earlier. Think about what it actually takes to feel regret the way you feel it. It takes depth. It takes the capacity to look honestly at your own life. It takes caring, genuinely, not abstractly, about the people you've shared it with. The people who feel nothing looking back are not the ones who got it right. They're the ones who never looked closely enough to notice what they might have done differently. Regret is not evidence of a life wasted. It is evidence of a life examined. And a life examined, even late, even imperfectly, even with grief mixed in, is a life that still has somewhere to go. There's a distinction that the psychologists make, and I think it's worth sitting with. They call it the difference between regret that consumes and regret that informs. Regret that consumes replays. It goes back to the same moment, the same conversation, the same door not opened, again and again, not to learn anything new, but because the mind doesn't know how to stop. That kind of regret is exhausting, and it changes nothing. But regret that informs, that's different. That kind of regret asks a question. What does this feeling know that I haven't been listening to? Because regret always knows something. Underneath the busyness, underneath the years of being useful and responsible and careful and stoic, underneath all of that, regret knows what your life was actually about, what you actually valued, who you actually loved, what you actually wanted to say and didn't. That knowledge is not a wound. That knowledge is a compass. And here is what I want you to understand. The fact that you have it, the fact that you can feel this clearly at this point in your life about what mattered and what didn't, that is not a late arrival. That is wisdom. Hard won, lived in, nobody gave it to you, wisdom. And wisdom is not meant to be held quietly. It is meant to be used. So let's talk about what that actually looks like. Because I am not here to leave you with a feeling. I'm here to leave you with something you can do before this week is out. Something small enough to actually happen and significant enough to matter. Do you remember the face I asked you to hold? I want you to reach out to that person. Not a long conversation, not a prepared speech, not an explanation of why it's been so long. Just this. A message, a call, a handwritten note, if that's more you. And when you reach out, don't explain the gap. Don't apologize for the silence. Just say something true. I've been thinking about you. I wanted you to know that you mattered. I wanted you to know that I'm grateful. That's it. That's the whole message. 3 sentences, or fewer. The words you've been carrying for years, finally finding somewhere to land. Most people, when they receive something like that, don't feel burdened. They feel found. And I want to say one more thing before we come to the end. Because some of you, and I suspect more than a few of you, are thinking of someone who is no longer here to receive that message. I want to speak to that directly. Grief and regret are not the same thing. Regret says, I should have done something differently. Grief says, I loved someone I can no longer reach. And loving someone you can no longer reach is not a failure. It is one of the most profound things a human being can experience. The love didn't go anywhere. It's still there. It just doesn't have anywhere obvious to go. Write it down anyway. Say it to the empty chair. Say it here, in the comments, if that's where it needs to go. There is something that happens when you finally say the thing you've been carrying. Even if no one is there to receive it, the weight changes. Not because the loss goes away, but because you stopped pretending it wasn't there. And in that honesty, in that small, quiet act of finally saying the true thing, there is more strength than in decades of silence.
You've spent a long time being useful. Being the one who showed up, who kept things running, who didn't make a fuss. And that mattered. It genuinely mattered. But there is a different kind of strength available to you now. Not the strength of doing, the strength of knowing. Knowing what you value, knowing what you regret, knowing, clearly, without flinching, what a life well lived actually looks like to you. That knowledge, at your age, with your history, is rare. Most people spend their whole lives not knowing what they actually want until it's no longer available. You know. The question is simply, what will you do with that knowing? Starting this week, starting with one face, starting with one message. Before I go, what's the one thing you wish you had said to someone who may no longer be here to hear it? Leave it below if you're willing. You might find you're not the only one who's been carrying it. Until next time, take good care of yourself. I mean that.